Welcome to the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and I am on the mission to change the narrative of immigration, one immigrant story at a time. Hey, Heidi here. I just wanted to take some time to thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to these immigrant stories, and thank you for being part of this community. And I know these past 2 weeks have been extremely heavy. And so I just want to thank you for coming back week after week to listen to these stories, to share them, highlight them, and just learn about different cultures and different history. And I just got back from a trip from going to the Mexican-Texas border to learn more about the borderlands. And I am trying to gather my thoughts and feelings around the trip. And I will be writing a post on my Substack, which you can sign up for. And going back and forth if I want to do a solo episode. Well, actually, it'll be more than one to share about my experience down there, since I normally do interview based episodes. However, there were a few people that I met down there who are going to be a guest on the show to share about living in the borderlands, about the work that they do in the borderlands, and their experience seeing everything firsthand. So that will be coming out later on this year. And again, just want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the mission to change the narrative of immigration, one immigrant story at a time. And thank you for your support. If you would like to further support the podcast, you can do so by signing up for the newsletter on Substack, donation, sponsorship, sharing with a friend. And those are all ways that you can help support the podcast. Thank you again so much for being here, and enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and today I have a very special guest. I have Rooya here with me, and she's going to be talking about her journey coming to the United States from Afghanistan. How are you, Rooya, today?
Heidy, I'm doing wonderful. I am honored to be here. I'm so excited for our conversation. Thank you for having me here.
No, thank you for being willing and open to sharing your story and your journey. I'm so privileged to be able to do this and just listen to so many different stories, and learn about different cultures and everything. And it's been an amazing ride doing this podcast. So no, I really, really appreciate you. I feel the one honored to have you and get to know you more.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So if you can just introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, what you do, and how was childhood growing up in Afghanistan?
So my work is helping women overcome, the challenges in their lives, to reawaken hope, reclaim their power, and begin to live a life of honor. My work is all about honor, healing shame. I use tools and skills such as powerful non-defensive communication, power presence storytelling. I am a storyteller as well as an immigrant, of course, and qigong. So dhikr, which is remembrance in Islam, a lot of different tools so that you can make the shift necessary to live a life worth living. Because I lived my life as an immigrant coming here full of unworthiness. That was my challenge. And growing up as a kid in Afghanistan, there was war, and I grew up with electricity, and then later we had no electricity. Life was getting really challenging. My father knew that it was not safe to stay there anymore.
Yeah.
So as much as I loved my country, and I always I think till the age of 15, I had hope of going back because I had such great memories.
Yeah.
And at 15, unfortunately, I gave up hope.
Aww.
So that was my life.
Yeah, yeah. So how many siblings, or is it just you?
Actually, I have 8 siblings. I have an
8.
older brother,
Wow.
yeah, and then I have 5 younger sisters and 2 younger brothers. And I became the parent of
Mm.
all my siblings. my father got remarried as well. So I became the parent of my father, my mother, and my stepmom. The
Okay.
mother of all my father, my mother, and my stepmom, and 8 siblings. It was a big challenge.
You're the oldest, the eldest?
My older brother's the oldest, but
Ah,
I always
okay,
felt
okay.
like he was, I always accidentally call him my younger brother because I felt like I was the parent, you know?
So you're the eldest daughter.
I'm the eldest daughter,
There it
exactly.
is. There it is. Okay, the eldest daughter. Yes, a lot falls on us, the
Yeah.
eldest daughter. So I see.
You're the oldest as well, then.
I am. Yep.
You know how
Yes.
I feel?
So when you guys left, was it all of you guys, all eight, or were some born here in the United States?
Actually, it was my older brother and my two younger sisters,
Okay,
and my parents. My other siblings were born here,
born here.
so they're
Okay.
different than mine, of course.
Okay, so talk to me about that journey, leaving and then arriving to the United States.
So we were told that if we were to leave, we could get in a lot of trouble. I mean, they were taking people and they were executing them.
Oh,
So it was during the Russian War, and communism was kind of taking over, and there were a lot of people against it, and of course they didn't like that. So
mhm.
they didn't want you to leave the country or stand up for whatever that you believed, and if they
Yeah.
found out you a certain thing, of course you were going to be executed. So we were forced to walk across the desert to Pakistan. And it was like three days, 3 nights journey. Most of it was just on foot. My brother actually lost a shoe. He told me later when I told him about the story. It was so traumatic for him. For me,
Yeah.
because I was 6, it was like, even though it was traumatizing, because you as a child, you go in your head and it becomes like, oh, this adventure. and
Adventure. Yeah, yeah.
and I just remember like the clear sky with all the stars. And I have this
Oh,
whole storytelling, 10-minute storytelling, where I depict this whole journey. And I have, sad moments and within the journey. Like I remember waking up um to a cry once we took rest. And then I look and it's all foggy and thick. It's like in a scary movie. And
yeah.
then I realize I'm in a cemetery, and it gets even
Oh
scarier.
my
And then
God.
I asked my mom, like, who's crying? What's going on? Is this a ghost? Is this a monster?
Yeah.
And then she says it's some women that were like separated from their men because these people who would take you across would separate you from your men so that they could either take advantage of you, steal your belongings, whatever, like they
Yeah.
always took extra advantage of their opportunities. And my father had to kind of like protect all these women. So
Wow.
it was a really interesting experience. But now I call that walk a path of honor, because
Mm,
growing up and feeling like, why did I deserve to be saved, made me feel very little, because I would always hear about, so many children not making it.
yeah.
And then you ask yourself, like, what was so special about me? Why did I get to be the one that was saved?
Mm,
And that kind of like hits you in a lot of ways. I believe that shame is like the wound that affects you from an early childhood, and it can affect you just by your mother not getting to you in time and never knowing that you were crying yourself to sleep.
mm,
It's not even like intentional by the parent, but it happens. And that child experiences that, and that becomes, like an imprint in their body that
yeah.
affects them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And because our society is so shame-based, we think we can shame each other into changing, we can shame each other into becoming better people,
Yeah.
that we're making a difference, and yet we're just hurting each other. So
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So how long were you guys in Pakistan?
we lived in Pakistan for 3 years.
3 years. Oh
Yeah.
wow. How was that experience?
It was not a full culture shock because, they practice the same religion. They did speak a different language. So I learned, I understood. I was too afraid to speak it. I was very shy.
Mm,
And then but the thing is because there was such a huge number of refugees there, we
mhm.
had our own schools and our own like system that was set up there. So I continued to learn Farsi, how to read and write Farsi, as opposed to Urdu, which is the main language in that country.
Okay.
So it's like I didn't fully assimilate into that society.
Okay. Thank you for saying the languages. I was actually going to ask just to provide that education piece to the audience. Thank you for sharing that. The journey that you're telling me of going through the desert is reminding me of stories that I've heard of people crossing from Mexico to the US and how they have the coyotes who help them cross, but some of them are not all that good. They do take advantage of people and stuff like that. So it just that's what came to mind as I was listening to you speak about that. But I'm glad that you guys were able to make it safe. So you guys lived in Pakistan for 3 years. So talk to us about the journey after that. Is from Pakistan, is that when you guys came to the US, or did you guys have to go to a different country before that?
We actually came straight to the US. So we were in Afghanistan. My first time getting on the plane was in Afghanistan, but they actually caught us and sent us back.
Oh,
Yeah, and they actually um, imprisoned my father for 6 months or something. So my first experience being on a plane was in Pakistan going to the US. It was like the most exciting experience I could ever imagine at that time. And so it was really exciting. And then when we were coming down to what, like we were right over Washington, D.C., we were going to go into Virginia because that's the first state we entered.
okay.
Um, it was Christmas time, and I saw so many lights, and my imagination of the US was like whatever sitcoms that we watched, on TV.
Yes. Yes.
And it was sort of like that, but not quite, obviously.
Yeah.
And but the biggest thing was all these lights. It was like so beautiful, and I was like, wow, there are so many colorful lights here. And in my story, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many colorful lights. There's colorful lights on trees indoors. So
Yes.
and um and I remember our first experience having pizza,
Oh,
which was
wow.
we like literally we had never seen pizza, let alone ate it.
Yeah.
And we walked around it like, what is this? And then we started picking at it. And then all we had was like, tomato sauce and like bread. And then we're like, oh, pizza's not so tasty. But of course, I grew up loving pizza now.
No. Oh my goodness. So that was your first culture shock. Just, I guess, just well, the pizza, the eating it, but then seeing all the lights on Christmas time and stuff like that. Man, your excitement about the airplane reminds me of my husband telling me his story when he came at 9 years old. Same thing.
Oh,
He was so excited to get on a plane to go to the US and things like that. So that came to mind. So one of the things I do like to ask and talk about is the expectations. I know you came as a child. So did you, or what were your expectations of the US at that age, at that time?
I really didn't have a lot of expectations actually because I was so attached to my country that I always wanted to go back. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like, oh, we're gonna go there for a few years, and then when it's safe, we'll go back to Afghanistan. And
Mhm.
transition was actually really difficult because I had a hard time learning how to read because we moved so many times,
Oh,
and I learned how to read finally in Farsi, or Dari, which is the main language that's spoken in Afghanistan. And then I came to the US at the age of 9, not knowing how to read and write anymore. And it was like I used to cry every day because I had become a straight 10 students over there. So we do, scoring by numbers. And then now I'm like starting from, like zero.
zero.
And
Yeah.
it was a lot of crying, and then eventually I learned how to read and write. It's amazing how resilient children are. And then
Really? Yeah.
of course I became the translator and
Mm.
all the other things that an immigrant child ends up doing, which I'm sure
Oh
you
my
know.
goodness. Yes. Yep. That is definitely a common theme on this podcast and with my guests. Yes. So 9. So you were in second or third grade? I'm trying to
Yes, I was supposed to be put in fourth grade, but yes, I ended up being in third grade. Yes.
third grade. Yeah, that's common too for immigrant children. They usually hold them back for a year. So what happened to my husband was he got held back a year until he learned English. And then once he learned English, he actually skipped a grade and was put back into the grade that he was supposed to be. Did something like that happen to you, or they just kept you back?
Didn't skip a grade. However, it was a good idea that I was held up back a grade because like you said, I also learned how to speak English,
Yeah,
and I just excelled in every grade in general. And it's
yeah,
amazing how he excelled and skipped a grade. That's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned that you guys came or landed in Virginia. Is that where you guys eventually settled, or what state did you guys settle in?
So we lived there only for 2 years, and then my father was looking for better opportunities because he just didn't feel like Virginia was the best place for us. We
Mhm.
actually almost lived in Las Vegas, but
Mm.
after like a few weeks, my mom was like, "This is nowhere I want to raise my."
Yeah.
So we moved back, and then my uncle like was extremely disappointed in my father, and so my father was like, "No matter what I do, I have to go back," because he had sold everything. We lived for 2 years there. It was
Yeah.
so hard making those 2 years work, and then he like sold everything and wanted to start this new life again. And then my uncle kept telling him, "Don't do it," and then of course he's like, "I told you so," and he did not like that. So we ended up in California. This is where I grew up, was
In
in California.
California. Oh my goodness. Okay, so from West Coast to East Coast, so grew up
Oh,
in California. And did you guys have an Afghan community around you guys or no?
In Virginia, we did.
Mhm.
They weren't as united and living close to, I mean, I shouldn't say they weren't as united. I think they were, but they weren't living too close together.
Yeah.
In California, they were living, everyone was living really close to each other. It was a bigger population. And I see that as a good thing and a bad thing because I feel like when you have too many of, people who speak the same language as you, sometimes instead of like encouraging each other, you kind of pull each other down. So a lot
Mhm.
of kids
Yeah.
here, they actually didn't learn English or learn it as well, like that I did because I was me and another girl were both Afghan, but she was born and raised there. She was
Mhm.
like speaking with her broken Farsi with me, and I was speaking with my broken English with her. And it
Oh,
was like I
yeah.
had to learn English. I had
Yeah.
no choice.
No, I can definitely see what you mean because what comes to mind is Miami, right? It's a heavy, heavy Cuban population there. I lived there for a few months and like I didn't speak English there because everyone was Cuban or everyone is Cuban, right? So it's like you go to Miami and it's like you're not even in the United States anymore. It's like they call it Little Havana, Little Cuba because it's legit. So I definitely understand what you mean with the good and the bad when you're heavy populated. And I've had guests who have told me that they purposely did not hang out with people from their home country because they wanted to emerge themselves into the American culture to learn English and force themselves to speak English so they could learn better. So I definitely see where you're coming from with that.
I would love just a combination of both. I don't want to lose the culture I
Yes.
have. At the same time, I don't want to be missing out in this culture as well, and the
Yeah.
opportunities that, yeah,
And do you speak Farsi today?
I do.
You do? Okay. And I mean, I don't know if you have children or not, but if you do you speak to your children?
So I have 3 boys, and I forgot I'm also a homeschooler.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, I have 3 boys. They used to speak fluent Farsi growing up. They were like so well spoken. And then of course
Yeah.
my husband, we were speaking English.
Yeah.
And then we were speaking Farsi with them, and they just looked at us like after a while when they started learning English, and they're like, why are we speaking Farsi when they're speaking English? So that was our fault. I continued to speak in Farsi with them so that they could keep whatever that they can with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So they have their broken Farsi. At the same time, they understand me when I speak to them in Farsi. So that's a good thing. And I'm currently teaching my little one who's not so little anymore, he's 15, how to speak it and write
Okay.
it. So yes.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And, okay, you mentioned your husband. Is he also Afghan?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay. Okay, awesome. And okay, so let's go back to California. Sorry. Just wanting to know just how was that growing up versus like, from back home? Like, is the weather similar, not similar, just how the differences between the two?
For me, the culture shock was from Virginia to California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, the weather in California is like it's sunny California, right? We always have the sun. Just recently, we had a good amount of rain, which we're really happy with. So Afghanistan was really cold, and
Okay.
we got a lot of snow. And so moving from Virginia to California, we moved from like humid, wet, hot weather to like dry, nice and sunny, pretty average heat.
Yeah.
And and so when I was visited back, when I went back, I couldn't stand it even for a day because you take a shower, you walk out, and you're
Yeah.
like sweaty, and you don't want to be, you want to just go back home and take another shower. So I was like, how did I even live here for 2 years? But I think it was also because of the heat in Pakistan. The heat in
Mhm.
Pakistan was unbearable. We used to have heat rashes all throughout the summer.
Ah.
So the Virginia weather wasn't so bad compared to there. But then California weather, it's like I can't, I don't think I could ever live anywhere else, even though I'd like to, because I'm so spoiled by the weather here.
So you're still in California, I take it.
In California. And then, like I was never introduced to bad words until I came to California. And
Oh.
I wasn't introduced to like kids getting in trouble a lot until I moved to California, and all kinds of stuff was in California.
It's a whole different world in California, huh?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That is amazing to think about how like even when you visit different states within the United States, right? Like it can be a whole different world. Like it can be like a different culture, food and stuff like, obviously our accent depending if you're from north, south can be different, but it's just like we have like 50 different worlds within the United States. It's crazy to think about.
That's so true. You're right. And even like within Northern and Southern California, there's just a world of difference in some ways, I tend to see Southern Californians a little bit, nose up in the air and all because of my memory of experience of my child falling into the jacuzzi and almost drowning, and everybody was just suntanning and didn't
Oh
even,
my gosh, just not paying
hey, you need
attention.
help?
Wow. Oh my goodness. So when you guys first moved, let's go back to Virginia. When you guys first moved, do you remember if there was like any non-immigrant that helped you guys or was welcoming, or how was that experience for you guys?
In Virginia or California or in general?
Oh, in general then. Yeah, in general.
Well, non-immigrant would be what my teacher, Mr. Dizarn, Mr. D, to call him in Virginia. He was like, oh, he was like a wonderful, wonderful person, and he really helped me actually learn how to speak English. And his wife was actually Afghan, so he would like
Oh
have
wow.
conversations in his broken Farsi with my parents, and my parents really appreciated that because they didn't
Yeah.
know how to communicate, right? And
Yeah.
his goal was to just like he had an ESL class, and his goal was to make sure that we learn how to speak English and that we excelled in our education. I honestly feel like if I didn't have him in my life, I probably wouldn't be where I am,
Oh,
because a lot of the struggle is in the language, right?
yeah.
And believing that you can learn a new language and excel in it and pursue a higher education with that new language, and to have someone that shows you, from that country that they believe in you, it means a lot.
Yeah. I love how you said that he made that effort to communicate with your parents even though it was broken Farsi, but that effort means a lot to
Yeah.
us immigrants in the immigrant community because it reminds me of my 5th grade teacher, white American, and
Yeah.
she knew some Spanish because I guess she had taken it either in college or high school or something like that. So she knew some Spanish, and at the time it was just me and my dad. And so when she did have, when we did have parent teacher conferences, instead of having me translate, she would put in the effort to speak to my dad in Spanish and just to like, as best as she could. I would try to help here and there, but sometimes kids can like not translate directly or what it is. But I
Sure.
appreciated that, like that I didn't actually have to translate because I was always translating for my dad, but she actually put that extra effort in being able in trying to communicate with my father. So I love that you had that teacher that helped you guys and helped you get to where you are today.
Yes. yes. So I love that you shared that story because you're right. For the first time, we don't have to sit there and be the adult, you know? So if another
Yes.
adult takes that place and does it for us, it means a lot for us.
Hmm. It,
Like,
it
okay,
does.
taken care of at least by this one adult.
Yeah. So yeah. So the thing, so I'm a first gen. And so obviously, I helped with the whole translating. And then I know obviously once you learn English, you help with the whole translating. And it does make us grow up quicker than an average kid. Cause again, we're in these adult conversations, helping our parents make adult decisions and sometimes even involved in things that, kids shouldn't be involved in. And how do you feel that having to do that for your parents and help out? How do you feel that shaped you or changed you in any way?
Honestly, I feel like it made me very resilient because
Mm,
when I saw my siblings and I saw their struggles, I just looked at them like, you don't even like, it's not even a fraction of what I experienced, and you're
yeah.
breaking down, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, so to me, it was just, even though I resented my parents for a while, you have to get over that phase,
Yep.
and I did eventually. I still learned to appreciate, that in the end it was all meant to be, and it was um it made me who I am, and it most certainly made me resilient because
Yeah.
life without resiliency, you see it, the life of privilege, you see people break down with the life with privilege,
Hmm.
where they're doing some crazy things because things just didn't go their way for the first time, right?
Yeah.
And get out on the world. And resiliency makes you not be that brat and not,
Yes.
and get through the big humps and the little humps and actually become a better version of you and make a better difference of a bigger difference in the world.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. That was such a beautiful answer. And it is so true. So true. So let's get into your work. So you're a life coach and you said you specifically help women. So how did this get started?
So that all goes back to the walk across the desert, and probably obviously earlier than that, where I struggled with a sense of unworthiness. I felt
Mm,
like I was never good enough. I actually have a little storytelling where I talk about, my first experience where I'm trying to communicate with the children waiting in the bus stop, and they're asking me, "Do you know English? Do you know English?" Even though I can tell they know I don't, and so it's frustrating because now they're forcing me to speak in a language that I don't know how to speak,
mm,
and I and so they say, "Do you know how to speak English?" And I say, "No, no." And then they say, "Oh, well, how do you know how to say no?" And then I'm thinking, well, it's simple, it's just a simple yes and no. And so then that's like, I grew up thinking, well, I'm not American enough.
mm.
That was the beginning of my belief that I'm not American enough. And then I get older, and I finally meet all these Afghans in California, and I've been looking for Afghans, right? And then I'm thinking, oh, now I get to be Afghan with all these Afghans. Little do I know that these Afghans they know things that I don't know. They act in ways that I've never experienced because I didn't grow up with them in California, and
Yeah.
some of them just came from the Afghanistan, and they have other, they came from a different world, even though it was the same country. And so then now I'm like facing another reality. Oh my God, I'm not Afghan enough.
Mm.
And then I become religious, and I start to attend these gatherings of Muslims, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I can be Muslim enough. I mean, it's the same religion, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh no, I'm not Muslim enough. So this
Mm.
feeling of never feeling like I was enough, it was that lack of unworthiness. And it got so far as me, and with my work, when you don't feel worthy, you don't seek abundance, you don't
Yep.
feel worthy of abundance. And that
Mhm.
could be even having children. So I had these three beautiful children, and my body just started to shut down because all I was doing throughout my life was people pleasing, being there for my mom and my dad and my friends and my neighbors, everybody, just to feel like I was worthy enough to exist. And it was taking a toll on me because that wasn't what life was about. It wasn't for me to be serving people who pretty much didn't even appreciate what I was doing for them at that point, because I was, like not focusing on my marriage and raising my three beautiful children, and just doing that because that's all I knew how to do. I didn't know how to be a mother. I didn't know how to be a wife. I didn't know how to be me for me. And so when I had these three children, my body shut down, and I went into this deep depression, and I was just sleeping all the time, and then waking up. And in one of my stories, I depict, like, I portray the that one moment when I'm laying on the couch, and I gasp for air, and I wake up, and I start screaming, "Where's my baby?" Or in my head, whatever it is, right? And I'm looking for my baby because I remember that I have a newborn on the floor, and I have two toddlers that might accidentally really hurt my baby.
Mm.
And um and this went on for years. And then I was like, I can't, this can't keep going. And I felt like the worst mother because I was always just shutting down. So then I started seeking out help. I met amazing people, life coaches, mentors, workshops, you name it,
Yeah.
everything. And I just, you know, found my way out of the darkness on my own. And what happened was I brought tools with me. And I realized I could have gotten out of that darkness a lot faster if I had all these tools, or if I had all these people that was helping me.
Yeah.
And so I decided that that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the tools that I have now that got myself out of this darkness and help other mothers, fathers, kids, whoever that needs my help, to pull them out of the darkness and realize our intrinsic worth. Because, I call myself the heart coach, and there's this line in the Quran that says that it is not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts which are in their breast. Because the heart, when it doesn't feel worthy, it doesn't feel worthy enough to exist. The person doesn't feel worthy enough to exist, and therefore they're not going to pursue anything better than beyond themselves, except
Yeah.
for just your existence, and
Yeah.
some of us with addiction, we just, that addiction makes us feel alive. And it doesn't mean that you are a horrible person because you have this addiction. It just means that if you probably didn't have that addiction, you probably wouldn't even be alive, because that's
Mm.
that making you feel alive.
Oh my
So
God.
that's why I call myself the heart coach, because I want to revive the hearts. I want to wake
Mm.
up the hearts, because the mind is just another tool that the heart can use. That's where life is. That's where the being is, makes you what makes you alive. And to me, like, God gave me as a gift to myself.
Mm.
How could I how could I not see the honor in that? How can I not see the blessing in that? How can I not see the worth in that?
Yeah. Oh, that is so true. My goodness. How can people connect with you if they want to work with you or just continue following you on this journey?
So I have a website. My name actually translates to clear vision. And I'm a dreamer. I'm
Oh.
always visualizing a better future. Obviously, my vision is to change the world, heal the world, make the world a better place.
Yeah.
So it's clearvisionhealing.com. That's my website. I am on Instagram. I started out with Strangers Path, and I think I'm going to keep it that way. Strangers
Okay.
Path, Facebook and LinkedIn. And yes.
Awesome. Well, I will definitely include all those links in the show notes and the show descriptions. And last question of wrapping this amazing story up. Thank you so much again for sharing. And I've learned so much. But what does the American dream mean to you?
So the American dream, it's I never learned about the American dream until much later, until I actually got married. And then my husband was talking about it. I was like, oh, what is that? To me, it means opportunity,
Mm.
to be able to have the opportunity. Because I recently visited a few different countries, and I realized that the type of opportunity we have with all the negatives that's in the US, with all the negatives, right? There is a lot, unfortunately. At the same time, there is, like, if you really seek out to get yourself out of a mess, to pursue a life worth living, to pursue success, the US still has that. You still
Mhm.
have unity and you still can get there.
Yeah, that is so true. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing today and for being here and for your, I can feel there's so much love that radiates from you. So thank you so much for just sharing your journey and for the work that you're doing, that you're working, with people's hearts and transforming them from the inside out. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much. And yeah, oh, I can't stop saying thank you. Thank you just for
Oh,
being here.
honestly, this was a great honor. It was a great experience. I really enjoyed our conversation. I loved what you're about, what you're all about, and your work. I think it's a lot of meaningful work. I hope that you continue and you transcend into further territories with your work. It's amazing, and you're making voices that need to be heard, and that's wonderful. And it's an honor to be part of your journey. Thank you.